This is someone who's practicing something called the traditional Latin Mass, which is divergent from the majority of Catholics. It's compared to being cult-like and extremist like some religions in the Middle East and Asia. So this is a very extreme religion, and what bothers me about that as a Christian.
Comparing the Latin Mass to a cult and radical Islamic extremist terrorists. It's commencement address season. As you know, we focused on Jerry Seinfeld's graduation speech that he gave at Duke last week. Now we want to bring you Harrison Butker. Now he is a Pro Bowl, Super Bowl champion kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs, and he was right there in Kansas. Yes, I know Kansas City is in Missouri, but it's all the same thing. He was at Benedictine College. Now, this is a Catholic college. Harrison Butker is a practicing and professing Catholic. So no one should be surprised if during his speech to the graduates from this Catholic college, this practicing Catholic sounded kind of Catholic.
For the ladies present today, congratulations on an amazing accomplishment. You should be proud of all that you have achieved to this point in your young lives. I want to speak directly to you briefly because I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. How many of you are sitting here now about to cross this stage and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and as a mother. I'm on this stage today and able to be the man I am because I have a wife who leans into her vocation. I'm beyond blessed with the many talents God has given me, but it cannot be overstated that all of my success is made possible because a girl I met in band class back in middle school would convert to the faith, become my wife, and embrace one of the most important titles of all, homemaker. She's the primary educator to our children. She's the one who ensures I never let football or my business become a distraction from that of a husband and father. She's the person that knows me best at my core, and it is through our marriage that, Lord willing, we will both attain salvation. I say all of this to you because I have seen it firsthand, how much happier someone can be when they disregard the outside noise and move closer and closer to God's will in their life. Isabel's dream of having a career might not have come true, but if you asked her today if she has any regrets on her decision, she would laugh out loud without hesitation and say, heck no.
Have you seen anything more incredibly wholesome and wonderful? Seriously, I mean, especially considering what we've been seeing on college campuses for the last couple of weeks or months, or really years. I mean, middle school band camp, seriously? And they're still together and they're happy. And here's a husband, a football player, breaking down in tears at the thought of his love for his wife and the devotion that she has shown him. Who can't love that? Who can't embrace that? Who can't celebrate that? These women. These women hated it. These women spent a lot of time screaming like banshees about it. So let's hear what they had to say.
So the NFL released a statement that he gave this speech in his personal capacity, and they do not, the NFL does not share his views. So, you know, listen, I like when people say what they need to say. He's at a Catholic college. Yeah. He's a staunch Catholic. These are his beliefs, and he's welcome to them. I don't have to believe them. Right. I don't have to accept them. The ladies that were sitting in that audience do not have to accept them. The same way we want respect when Colin Kaepernick takes a knee. Right. We want to give respect to people whose ideas are different from ours, because the man who says he wants to be president, you know who? Yeah. He says the way to act is to take away people's right to say how they feel. We don't want to be that. We don't want to be those people. So I'm okay with him saying whatever he says. And the women who are sitting there, if they take his advice, good for them. They'll be happy. If they don't, good for them. They'll be happy a different way. That's my attitude.
All right. So, and thank you, Newsbusters, for the clip there. I appreciate it. Let's break that down for a minute, because it sure sounds like Whoopi Goldberg is acting very free speechy. But then she's got the gotcha moment there to the NFL on Colin Kaepernick and to Donald Trump. First of all, the only president in my recent memory who's trying to take away people's right to free speech is the current president, who's censored people on social media and in media in general for, complaining about the vaccine or asking questions about the vaccine or about masking or about social distancing or about his son's laptop. Okay, so get that one straight. I'm not familiar with Donald Trump trying to keep people from speaking their mind or using their First Amendment rights. Number one. Number two, there's a huge difference here between Colin Kaepernick taking a knee during the Star Spangled Banner and what Harrison Butker just did at a college graduation. And you know what the difference is. Of course you know. What Colin Kaepernick did, he did in his football uniform, on the job, in the stadium at the beginning of a game. Of course the NFL has a right to say, you're representing us, you're representing our team, you're representing our company and our brand, and that's not how we want to be represented, number one. But number two, the NFL didn't do that. This whole legend that's been created around Colin Kaepernick, oh, they silenced him, they punished him, they didn't do any such thing. Colin Kaepernick was allowed to do it the entire season, and other players as well. I wish the NFL had said something. They waited until the offseason to reiterate their rules and make them more stringent and forceful and come up with a compromise with the Players Association. But they've created this mythology that Colin Kaepernick was punished. He wasn't. He should have been, but he wasn't. But meanwhile, yeah, the NFL has actually issued a statement condemning Harrison Butker for what he said in his private capacity as a faithful Catholic at a Catholic college. And here's the best part. This statement came from the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at the NFL. And apparently diversity doesn't include being a faithful Christian. Also, the NFL neglects to put out a statement when one of their players is busted for, beating up on their wives or girlfriends. They just stay silent and shuffle their feet on the floor, staring up at the ceiling and saying, oh, we don't comment on our players' personal situations. We're just going to let this play out in the legal system. So there you go, football players. Go ahead and beat up on your girlfriend, and the NFL won't say a damn thing about it. But you express an opinion that is in keeping with mainstream Orthodox Christianity around the world and has been so for millennia, and you're going to get condemned by the NFL. Good to know where they stand. But the ladies of the View weren't done. We now have Christian criticism from Sarah Haynes. She's right up there with St. Augustine and Thomas Aquinas in her understanding of Christian theology, scripture, and tradition.
So I agree with you and I disagree with you. So I agree with you that freedom, in the spirit of freedom of speech, I don't want people shut down or fired for things they're willing to say. Yeah. I will break with you on the comparison to Colin Kaepernick for this reason. Colin Kaepernick was standing up for the rights of many and saying in a social justice moment, this is a reminder that we're not there yet. What this man is doing is not just a devout Catholic. This is someone who's practicing something called the traditional Latin Mass, which is divergent from the majority of Catholics. It's compared to being cult-like and extremist like some religions in the Middle East and Asia.
Oh, my God. Oh, and I literally mean, oh, my God. The traditional Latin Mass is cult-like and compared like some of the extreme religions in the Middle East. You mean like Orthodox Christianity in the Middle East? You mean like the Assyrian Church or the multiple rites of the Catholic Church that have an affiliation with Rome that are in the Middle East and in the East in general? Is that what you mean? Or are you likening this to radical Islamic terrorism? I believe she's likening it to terrorism. The traditional Latin Mass, Ms. Haynes, up until 50 years ago, was also known as the Catholic Mass and had been so for about 1,000 years, literally until about 50 years ago. And yes, it is still practiced today with the full, well, maybe not the full support of Rome, but tacit support from Rome. This current Pope, he's not a huge fan, but he hasn't banned it. And it's certainly not cult-like, but it's this kind of anti-Catholic bigotry. Are you hearing this, ABC News? Bigotry that you just allowed your employee to espouse on your show that led to Christopher Wray's FBI, under the leadership of Merrick Garland, to investigate Americans going to traditional Latin Mass as though they were extremist terrorists in this country. It's funny how she compares this to the Middle East, because if she had just said what she said about Catholics, if she had said that about Muslims, she'd be off the air. All right, I'm going to let you finish here, because now she's going to lecture all of us about how to be a proper Catholic. Oh, no, how to be a proper Christian writ large.
So this is a very extreme religion, and what bothers me about that as a Christian is that when people abuse Christianity, they often not only cherry pick from the Bible, they misinterpret and lie by omission, by taking out parts that would have explained something a little better. So what I can say to him as a Christian is, if you're using this to oppress a people or hold them down, you're not walking with Jesus. If you are using the religion, if you're more obsessed with the religious rituals and practices than you are with the word of Jesus, you're not walking with Jesus. And if you're using it for the judgment of others and as a weapon to beat people down, you're also not walking with Jesus. So I would really encourage him to find the best parts of faith and not diverge into extremist beliefs.
Well, there you go, everybody. That's the gospel according to Sarah. Apparently, Jesus never judged anybody. Okay. Might want to have an examination of the gospels there.
He will one day.
Sorry, Kevin?
Jesus will judge a lot of people one day.
There's going to be a lot of judging going on. But I also think he had plenty to say in the gospels when he was separating those sheep and goats. I think there was plenty going on there. And by the way, so did the epistles. We're full of a lot of judgments, full of a lot of the roles of men and women in walking the Christian path. Lots of descriptions of what sinful behavior would keep one from the kingdom of God. But listen, again, I'm not trying to pontificate. I'm merely bringing analysis to the table. Sarah's the one who's telling you how a Christian is supposed to think and behave. And that's quite a platform there on The View, ABC News, for her to do such a thing.
If this is his belief system, if there are many Catholics who are staunch this way and don't
actually small percentage go into the Latin Mass.
I'm just telling you, there are many people who believe this way. And I'm simply saying, rather than write a petition to get him fired, because
don't get him fired.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
Discourages it, just so you know, in the Catholic Church, the Pope diverges from this belief.
There you go. He's also telling us about what the Pope thinks. I appreciate that as a Catholic, to have a non-Catholic tell me what the Pope thinks. Listen. I don't want to get into a debate here about the traditional Latin Mass, but let me just tell you this, okay? Because I do know things about my faith. I know some things about Harrison Butker's faith. If you are a Catholic in America and you prefer the traditional Latin Mass, you are 100%, 1,000% a Catholic in good standing. You are a Christian in good standing with the Catholic Church in America and with the Vatican, period. She does not know what she's talking about. And to compare it to a cult is so odious and so disgusting and so despicable. I can't even begin. And did you notice that Whoopi keeps using this word, staunch Catholic, staunch Catholic? Can you please tell me this is the problem with Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi being the highest profile Catholics in America, because they're pro-abortion. They're pro-LGBT behavior. So now this is the bar for people in the media like Whoopi Goldberg to think, oh, that's what a Catholic is. And anyone who thinks that that kind of behavior is sinful, they're staunch Catholics. No, actually, they're just Catholics. The staunch Catholics who believe abortion is a sin. Okay, guys, there's nothing staunch about that. But this is our problem. When Joe Biden keeps saying that he's such a devout Catholic and he goes up and presents himself for communion every week, when it is 100% sinful for him to do so, then it drags the rest of the church down. That's why the bishops actually need to step up and do something about it. All right, let's move now to Alyssa Farah, who had something to say about Harrison Butker. But their heads were exploding over this football player, a kicker even. He's not even a real football player. I'm kidding. I'm joking.
And what I found is there were things I agreed with. There was a lot I disagreed with. Galatians tells us the whole of the law is fulfilled as this: love your neighbor as thyself. He chose to target the LGBTQ community. Yeah. He thought there was a way that you could speak with humility about your beliefs that you stand for, but you can't alienate certain parts of Scripture. I have this huge issue with this trad wife homemaker thing. What a remarkable privilege. If you get to marry an NFL kicker who wins the Super Bowl, you too might get to be a homemaker in this economy. But also, he ignores the Proverbs 31 woman who goes and she's a leader in her community. She barters in the streets. She earns. She contributes to her household. I see this so much, the melding of political with the faith that ignores half of the Bible and just picks the convenient.
This whole idea that what they heard from Harrison Butker about his wife, for Alyssa Farah to then say, oh, but what about in Proverbs when women go out and barter, they contribute to the family? Everything that Harrison Butker said was how his wife contributes to the family without having to make money. This reductionism in the secular left that says that you women, anybody in a family is not contributing to the family unless you're bringing money in. It's despicable. It's degrading. It's disgusting. Yes, it's unbiblical, but it's also deteriorating to our culture. And all Harrison Butker was saying to these graduates at a Catholic college, mind you, is that, ladies, you might reach an age in your life where all you've done is make money and you haven't looked at some of the other callings that you have, and you might not be so happy. Take my wife, for instance. She found her calling as a wife and mother. I'd be nowhere without her. Our family would be nowhere without her. He broke down in tears in his love and admiration and overcome with emotion because of what an amazing woman she has been and what she's contributed to the family. And for them to just take that, hear that, and say, well, what about these people have contributed because they bartered in the square in Old Testament Judea and brought in a couple of shekels to the family. There is no comparison. That's the whole point of what Harrison Butker was saying. This is the kind of valuable information that a young person should hear at a graduation, because it does lead to happiness. And we'll get to who's happiest here in a moment. But first, you heard a slander there from Alyssa Farah. I don't think Alyssa Farah saw the whole speech. I think she saw write-ups on the speech. I searched this. Harrison Butker degrading LGBTQ, singling out LGBTQ, isolating LGBTQ people. Do you know what he said? Do you know what the singling out was? He used the word dangerous gender ideology. That's all he said. In fact, here, I'll give you the whole passage here where he ventured into some of the high-profile cultural issues now facing our society and our culture that run contrary to our faith.
Bad policies and poor leadership have negatively impacted major life issues. Things like abortion, IVF, surrogacy, euthanasia, as well as a growing support for degenerate cultural values in media, all stem from the pervasiveness of disorder. Our own nation is led by a man who publicly and proudly proclaims his Catholic faith, but at the same time is delusional enough to make the sign of the cross during a pro-abortion rally. He has been so vocal in his support for the murder of innocent babies that I'm sure to many people, it appears that you can be both Catholic and pro-choice. He is not alone. From the man behind the COVID lockdowns to the people pushing dangerous gender ideologies onto the youth of America, they all have a glaring thing in common. They are Catholic.
All right, now I want to pause here for a moment because this is incredibly important context. Let me remind you again the slander that Alyssa Farah said here about Harrison Butker's speech. Listen.
Phil is this: love your neighbor as thyself. He chose to target the LGBTQ community. He thought there was a way that you could speak with humility.
All right, so you just heard what he said. He did not target the LGBTQ community. He gave a whole laundry list of cultural issues. He said dangerous gender ideology, but he also talked about abortion as murder. He talked about diversity, equity, and inclusion. He talked about a whole lot of things. But the last part of what he said is the most important part, okay? And this is what's lost on everybody criticizing Harrison Butker. From the NFL to the ladies at The View to that person on your Facebook page whose hair is on fire right now. Listen to the last part of this part of his speech where he talks about these cultural issues: gender, DEI, critical race theory, abortion. Listen carefully.
He is not alone. From the man behind the COVID lockdowns to the people pushing dangerous gender ideologies onto the youth of America, they all have a glaring thing in common. They are Catholic.
Did you catch it? Did you hear it? He didn't isolate LGBTQ individuals. He didn't isolate anybody who's got an abortion. He didn't isolate anyone who subscribed to it. He's talking about Catholics in leadership roles, from Anthony Fauci to Joe Biden to Andrew Cuomo to Nancy Pelosi to Gavin Newsom. These people who profess their Catholic faith and stand up and do things that are contrary to the faith in the public square. This speech is not about abortion. It's not about gender ideology. It's not about critical race theory. It's not about any of those things. It's about bad Catholics. This is a Catholic giving a speech to young Catholics, graduating from a Catholic college, about to embark on a Catholic adult life, and he's saying, don't be a bad Catholic. This isn't about you, Whoopi Goldberg. It's not about you, Alyssa Farah. It's not about you, Sarah Hines. This is a Catholic speaking to Catholics about other Catholics. But it's lost on everybody. Everyone. Deliberately. It's deliberately lost on them, but it's not lost on us. This is a great speech from Harrison Butker, and a little bit more. I almost called him Harrison Faulkner. Harrison Butker. Here, listen a little bit more. Again, notice the podium. Benedictine College. This is a Catholic speech for a Catholic audience about Catholics who were in leadership, who have succeeded at high levels, as these kids in this room hope to do someday, who have then turned their back on their faith. That's what this is about.
This is an important reminder that being Catholic alone doesn't cut it. These are the sorts of things we are told in polite society to not bring up. You know, the difficult and unpleasant things. But if we are going to be men and women for this time in history, we need to stop pretending that the Church of Nice is a winning proposition. We must always speak and act in charity, but never mistake charity for cowardice. It is safe to say that over the past few years, I've gained quite the reputation for speaking my mind. I never envisioned myself nor wanted to have this sort of a platform, but God has given it to me, so I have no other choice but to embrace it and preach more hard truths about accepting your lane and staying in it.
Yeah, that part about always being a Catholic, but always practicing charity and love and humility, that was also lost on everyone. That part of his speech didn't make it onto The View. No, they just used their platform for anti-Catholic bigotry, and ABC News should be ashamed of themselves, comparing the Latin Mass to a cult and radical Islamic extremist terrorists. All right, a little bit more here from our pal Allison Farah.
One thing, if I may add, I don't know if you guys know, I went to a very religious college, and a lot of what he was talking about here is largely Christian Catholic orthodoxy, but he steps further by wading into the political. He took a swipe at Joe Biden. He brought up DEI, which has nothing to do with anything I've ever read in scripture. Yeah. And then he leaned really heavily into talking about like the ideal man and being a godly man, an example. Missed an opportunity to talk about the man who might be the leader of the free world, Donald Trump, and his many shortcomings.
Yeah, again, Donald Trump doesn't profess to be a practicing Catholic like Joe Biden did. It wasn't political. It was about our faith. And here's and my final word on all of this. Clearly, I had a lot to say. There are hundreds of college commencements that go on every year at this time, and there is a small handful, like literally a handful, like you can count them on one hand, of speeches delivered by people who aren't radical leftists, who are either not liberal or, in some cases, like Harrison Butker, at least culturally conservative. I have no idea how he votes. I can make a guess, but I don't know. But there's so few that actually make the cut and are invited to give speeches like this. And meanwhile, there's hundreds that come from the other direction. And the one outlier gets criticized like this, who gets the NFL is condemning him and gets this whole discussion on The View to call him names and to lie about him. Normally, the kind of person you get at one of these speeches to inspire young people as they're about to start their lives, well, normally it would be Whoopi Goldberg. In fact, I bet Whoopi Goldberg has given many commencement addresses. There she is on The View right there. She's very popular. She's got an EGOT after all. And it's amazing to me that the biggest criticism that you saw from the women on The View was what Harrison Butker said about his wife. Do you think that a man would ever be moved to tears thinking about the love that he's had for his wife, Whoopi Goldberg, and their decades of devotion after meeting in middle school? Well, I can tell you the answer is no. In fact, Whoopi Goldberg has been divorced 3 times. She's divorced now. And she has said in interviews that she never really loved any of her husbands. So that's the message she could deliver to the young women who are graduating college. She could also talk about the abortion that she administered to herself when she was 14 years old with a coat hanger, and then the subsequent 6 or 7 abortions she had by the age of 25. She can't actually remember the exact number, 6 or 7, by the time she was 25. That would be the inspiring message Whoopi Goldberg delivers to a college graduation, specifically targeting young women about fulfilling their hopes and dreams in the future. I mean, listen, they're both certainly powerful messages to send young women. You could have what Harrison Butker said as he broke down in tears talking about his wife and how incredible she has been on his journey of faith and salvation, and the vocation that they share as husband and wife through the sacrament of marriage and being parents of children, and what she has done to contribute to their household and family. And he would be nothing without her, as he fights back the tears. That's one message to send women coming out of college. Or, you know, I've never loved any of the husbands that I've divorced, 3 of them now. And I've had 6 or 7 abortions after my first one at 14. Not sure how many. Absolutely 2 legitimate messages. You go ahead and choose your fighter, will you? I know which one I want on my side.